Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of the Onsite and Offshore podcast. I'm your host Suresh Ashok, founder of Muncie Infotech with a passion for selling and supporting offshoring projects, where we chat with business owners and professionals involved in offshoring initiatives and also connect with entrepreneurs who outsource the work to India. Joining us today is Gill Walker from Australia. Gill is the CEO of Offshore, a Sydney-based consulting firm which she founded in 2004. As a Microsoft MVP certified trainer and CRM solution architect with over 2 decades of experience, she has been at the forefront of CRM success, particularly with Microsoft Dynamics 365. Jill has helped numerous businesses transform their customer relationship management system. Let's welcome her to the show. Let's dive into the journey and gain insight into CRM success. Welcome to the show, Jill. How are you doing today?
I have had an awesome day. Thank you for asking, Suresh.
Well, my God, it's 6:30, 6:45 in Sydney now. What, 7 o'clock?
6 of the 3, 6:45 is the closest. 42 to give you an accurate answer.
Well, the reason I asked you was you're sounding very energetic, even at this time.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
The night is yet young.
Jill, you're my first international guest. Just to let you know, I've interviewed so many people in my podcast in season 1 and season 2. So you're the first international guest. We're going to talk about offshoring as well as your career and the business, what you do. So really, really happy and excited. I'm truly excited. I hate this word using excited off lately because everywhere I see in LinkedIn using AI and Chat GPT, I'm thrilled, I'm excited, but today I'm really. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Suresh. It is really good to be here.
Fantastic. So let's dive straight to the topic, Jill. As you know, our podcast is based on the on-site and offshore theme. So my first question I always, ask my guests is when did you first? I mean, for you it will be different. The reason is all my guests I ask when were they exposed to on-site projects and offshore project. For you, my question would be when did you first started using offshore resources, and any particular reason for you to explore offshoring team and resources?
The fine detail of when I'm struggling with probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Why? Quite simply because Opsys was growing, and Opsys has grown and shrunk over the 20 years since I founded it. And it was in a growth phase, and I was struggling to find resources in Australia. So I started exploring offshore people, and I've used some technical people. I've also used VAs, and I've now got a marketing person, none of whom are Australian based. I have also, by contrast, had Australian people in all of those roles as well.
Right. So it's just, lack of resources in Australia. I mean, I'm not sure, should I say that or not? Or I know you mentioned that your organization was growing and you wanted to explore some other option as well. Is there any other reason as well? What is the resources availability in Australia right now?
Well, there's a massive shortage. It would take me about 10 seconds on Google to pull up articles with 5-figure numbers of the shortage per year. Now that's IT, which obviously is far bigger than where I specialize in Microsoft Dynamics Power Platform area.
Right.
But the shortage is massive. That shortage in turn leads to what I call the revolving door, that you can take someone on and then you can put a fair amount of effort briefing them on projects, how you work, because the Opsys approach is somewhat different to a lot of people, to a lot of organizations, and we may return to that point later on.
Right. And what has been your experience so far while interacting? I've interacted with you. I mean, by the way, for the audience, I've chased Jill. I've been interacting with her for the last 4 or 5 years or even more than that. I mean, as a sales guy, my goal again was to get some business out of her. So Jill, how is it like? What is your take so far in interacting and using offshore resources? You can be very straightforward and honest.
I have got one person at the moment who is leading my team, and he has been awesome. He's from Nepal and he's been great. I've had a few other people from a number of different companies, and it's been mixed, to be honest. There's been challenges with language, which is one of the things that you mentioned earlier. There's been challenges with people saying that they've got experience that they certainly haven't got. There's been challenges on working hours. So I've had people that want to work an Indian 9 to 5 day, and then they assume that the Australian people will also work an Indian 9 to 5, which of course means staying up to 11 o'clock at night, which is not really feasible to do on a regular basis. There's also a lot of cultural differences. Something, and this wasn't when I was using resources, but I was on a project that had an Indian company doing a lot of the technical work. There was a big festival in November and no notice was given, and just the entire team was off. And really quite, now what do we do sort of situation, because again, it was a misunderstanding that I am sure the people themselves were so embroiled in whatever the festival was, they couldn't believe that Australian people didn't know about it and it's someone else's job to alert them.
Right.
So I think I've seen both ends and probably some of the middle of that spectrum, which may well not be the answer that you were hoping for.
No, certainly not. I want you to, give an honest answer. The reason is, my audience is largely Indian audience, and everybody knows about it. What's the purpose of discussion is so that someone can pick up and learn. The point which you made, I really, I was also surprised that nobody informed you that they were going on a holiday, and I can understand, how you would have encountered that situation. It could be any particular projects, or you would have committed to your client on a delivery or completing a particular task, and when nobody turns up and tells you that, that's pretty horrible.
It wasn't just sort of nobody came in one Monday or whatever day, but
Right.
it was something like there was a conversation one evening, and how long will this take? Oh, but we won't be able to work on it for another week because we're all off. That sort of approach.
Oh, okay. I think it must be Diwali, the festival
I
you're
think
about.
it was Diwali.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So
So that
if I summarize it, what you've said, communication. I mean, you have you've mentioned it very clearly. There are some positives as well as there are some negatives as well. And some of the folks who are still working with you, be it from resource from Nepal as well as from India, and some of the challenges what you've encountered is communication. That's the top one, you said.
I think communication.
Right.
And then, if going back to that festival, all of the cultural differences and the culture that you live and work in is
Right.
something that you just take for granted, your
Mhm.
own culture.
Right.
But once you start working very closely with someone in a different culture,
Hmm.
it can be quite challenging to manage. And of course, a lot of the management does fall to me as the business owner, client owner, project owner, far more so than it does the offshore resource, who are
Right.
probably much more just doing their job.
Angela, apart from you, you've used the resources, you interact with lots of C-level executive, and I follow you on LinkedIn. You're pretty active, interacting, in a public platform as well. What is the general perception about Australian companies over, tech resources in India, either offshore resources or the resource they hire, move
Mm.
from India to Australia?
I think the perception is that there's definitely good people out there, but you have to work hard to find them.
Mhm.
And you need to be very selective. You need to have a good selection process so that you can really find good people. So, sure, they are there to be found,
Mhm.
but if you employ the first person that you interview, the probability of you getting a good person is probably quite slim.
Absolutely. And I just recall you also said about experience, like, people are not showing the real experience because as an individual with so much of expertise, 25 years of experience here?
I've been running Opsys for 20 years.
20 years.
This month, in fact, I posted, it'll only go out later
Right.
this week,
Right.
a blog about that my 20th anniversary running Opsys.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
But I've been in the CRM space more than just Dynamics for probably about 30 years now.
Right. So I'm sure you can easily figure out, when people come to you with fake experience or expertise just to win that contract.
Yes, yes. And I will ask 3 or 4 questions. And there have been some people who, well, it's really quite interesting. One of the worst experiences, someone did exceptionally badly in interview and they wanted time to go and do some prep and they wanted to come back and have another interview the next day once they'd prepped the questions. And it was really, which part of no do you not understand? That I don't want someone that can read the script because this is an example. It
Yeah.
will be very different to the project that you're working on.
Right. And was this from India?
I think that person was from India, yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'll put that across as a feedback, when I publish this episode. Any good experience, at all on because you do lots of CRM work, CRM development. Anything good that comes to your mind, you have interacted with?
Well, my current tech lead, who's
Yeah.
been with me now 2 years,
Right.
is absolutely fantastic.
Right.
And there are times when I reflect on his journey and how his confidence has grown working with me and the quality of work. And not only the quality of work, and that is really, really good, but also quality of the conversations. I wish I could go back and listen to some of the recordings of our early meetings when getting him to say more than yes or no was a challenge. Whereas now he will push back and argue and tell me I'm wrong. And it's absolutely awesome because that is what it takes to deliver quality work to the customer. Somebody who just says, yes, Jill, no, Jill, 3 bags full, Jill, and doesn't tell me when I've got the wrong idea or they don't understand is not likely to deliver quality work. I just wish we could get to the position that I've got my current person to without it taking, well, he's been with me 2 years, but in fairness, it didn't take 2 years, although it's constantly improving. But it would be nice to be like that from day one. But I think that's one of the cultural pieces that we've got to understand, that the whole of the Indian subcontinent culture is very different to Australian. And of course, I'm not Australian originally. I'm from the UK.
Okay.
And it's very different also to UK. So I've employed people in both areas. I've also worked across Europe when I was with Microsoft. And again, it's just different, different, different. That doesn't make it better or worse. But you've got to go with the flow. You've got to understand how that culture works, make quite a lot of accommodation for it.
Well, absolutely. Completely agree with you. So both sides, the team which is offshoring the work to India need to have some understanding about the cultural differences, the time zone, before they start using the offshore resources, because that's going to, that's a kind of an investment what they have to do, for a long-term partnership with offshore resources or Indian companies. Do you want to drop his name, the person who is working with you? I would like to talk to him as well, in my next episode or in the future.
His name's Abhishek.
Abhishek. Okay. Fantastic. Sounds good. That's a fantastic experience you have shared so far. And my next question is, I know, in Microsoft Dynamics, as a Microsoft MVP and someone who's worked with Dynamics since the early days.
Very early days. As I say, lots of things. I cut my teeth on version 1.0 beta
Right.
22 years ago.
22 years ago. Okay, that's long back. So, what do you think? How the Dynamics CRM has evolved, and what do you think the future holds for Microsoft Dynamics CRM as well as CRM in general?
Well, the product, without a shadow of a doubt, has evolved enormously. I wrote about this in an article that I'm publishing tomorrow or the day after when I'm talking about the 20 years since I founded Opsys. Microsoft CRM, as it was called then, 1.0 and 1.2, didn't even have any marketing. It was purely sales and customer service. Now it is the keystone of an entire suite of products that will support pretty much every area of the business. And well, it's not even an evolution, because in that time we've had a number of major changes. I remember what was it called? I think it was Dynamics CRM at this point, but I'm honestly not completely sure. But version 4 came out in about 2007. And I nicknamed that release multi, because what it then supported was multi-tenancy, multilingual, and multi-currency. To say that today in 2024, 17 years on, most people would laugh at it, because those three concepts are just so integral to the product. We've now, of course, got all of the Power Platforms, so not just the apps, but we've got Power Portals so that you can give external people access to the system without a license. We've got Power BI, which augments the native reporting that you can get inside Dynamics 365. We've got Power Automate, which will let you automate almost anything. So you can get now pretty close, if you design it correctly, to what I call the worm approach to an overall system. And worm stands for write once, read many. In other words, if you implement the system, and this is not just CRM, this is everything that touches your customer from cradle to grave, you should be aiming for any one element of data only gets entered once, and the system then takes it to all the places that it's needed, not users rekeying the same information. So that's one of my mantras, I suppose. Aim for a worm implementation.
Right. And what do you think about the future of dynamic CRM?
It's
And as
going
well
to
as there are other competition as well, Salesforce, HubSpot, and all in comparison to Dynamics. Where do you rate the other CRM?
I think Dynamics, mainly because of it coming from Microsoft and the whole Microsoft ecosystem.
Right.
That ecosystem has given it a massive jumpstart, and I think it will just keep taking advantage of that jumpstart and going on and on and on. If we look at what's happening in the AI, artificial intelligence space,
Right.
that obviously Copilot is really big. But Microsoft foresaw that, and there was functionality in Power Platform, Power Apps, probably 3 years ago, which we didn't call artificial intelligence. We certainly didn't call Copilot, but things that are now under that umbrella of Copilot, AI, artificial intelligence, were available then with some of the bots, with some of the other image recognition and a whole suite of other stuff.
Right.
So it's been coming and it's going to keep going. My instinct is to get similar functionality from Salesforce. The integration is going to be much more complex.
Right.
And that causes problems in that the more complexity you've got there, the more chances of links in the chain breaking, and therefore it's harder. So Salesforce, I was reading an article earlier today that Salesforce is buying up left, right, and center.
Right.
But nevertheless, they are originally separate products. And sure, they've got a team, a massive team of developers bringing them in, but they're still starting from separate products where Dynamics 365, maybe not the ERP stuff, the Copilot, the Office suite, and a whole heap of other things that form that foundation that have given Dynamics the jump start, they have all come out of the Microsoft stable, and it shows.
Right. And also, I completely agree with you. The Microsoft suites of products, which makes any organization like, the first preference for dynamic CRM. Do you think that also makes the implementation process easier because you mentioned about integration? How about the implementation process? Like, when someone is already in the dynamic CRM ecosystem, I mean, in the Microsoft ecosystem.
In some areas, undoubtedly yes. In other
Right.
areas, undoubtedly no. So, for example, there's a really nice integration with SharePoint. Now, there's a lot that SharePoint has in common with other members of the Microsoft family. So, if it's appropriate for a project to do that integration, to put the file storage into SharePoint, and there's a lot of reasons for doing that, there's also some for not doing it, then that knowledge will, without a shadow of a doubt, be beneficial. Same goes for making Dynamics work with Teams, with, well, even
Yeah.
with Microsoft Outlook, which way back when, one of the big leg ups that Microsoft CRM got was the fact that it had native email functionality, which a lot of the competition at the time didn't have. So even though the Outlook add-in was really quite clunky and memory hugging in the early days, it still gave it that leg up over a lot of the competition.
And
That will continue. I can't tell you exactly how it will continue. If we'd been having this conversation a year ago, the chances are we wouldn't have discussed Copilot. And
right.
here we are. Copilot is part of many people's world.
Absolutely.
I used it yesterday to design an image for the 20th anniversary blog.
That's a very useful piece of information. And any feedback you have received from any of your clients who are using Dynamics CRM, with Copilot as well as Field Service and the Power Apps, Power Automate, like any feedback you have received from them, like how things have evolved in the dynamic space, CRM space.
Technical people are aware of the evolution.
Right.
The majority of my clients, unless they are technical people, have usually only come across Dynamics maybe a year or so prior to the project. So they won't have that rear view vision. In fact, there have been a few people when I say I've been working with Dynamics for 20 years or 15 years or whatever was true at the time. And as I said, it's now 22. And they fall over and they say, "What? I didn't even know it existed." But no, they weren't in an environment where it added any value. For a lot of organizations 22 years ago, they didn't even have anything worth calling a customer database. The whole CRM thing was only for the big end of town. So the telcos, the utilities, the large companies, where now, even for a small business, if you haven't got at least a CRM solution, it might not be massively technically complex, but you should have a CRM solution. Otherwise, you can wave your business goodbye.
Well, absolutely. Who will manage those kind of data? Who will do proper follow up? I mean, I'm talking about from the sales perspective. pretty hard to remember. I mean, earlier when I started my career, people were using Excel sheets. Even when there was a CRM in place, I mean, where I was working, they had this Microsoft Dynamics CRM, but it was pretty hard to use. At that point of time, you need to go through multiple applications, one pop up, another pop up, and updating thing was pretty tough. But now it's far easier. It's easy to use, as well as you said, the integration with other business application is also much more user friendly. So now I think people have started using it. And for you to be a successful sales or marketing person, you need to use a CRM system as well as, to present it to the management as well. You need to have a proper system in place. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult.
It's impossible to operate without something that
Right.
keeps that information up to date.
Right. And you also do a success RM program, which
Yes.
focuses on improving CRM success rate. What are the biggest challenges company face when implementing CRM, and how does your program address them? And you've been also, popular in working on rescuing project, right? The project which has failed, as someone has failed, bad implementation as well.
I do a lot of picking up projects that are failing or have failed. And when I look at it, there are probably two common reasons that these projects fail. The first, and maybe the biggest, in fact, definitely the biggest of all of these, is a lack of understanding on both sides. So, a lack of understanding on the technical side of the business drivers for a particular project, and a lack of understanding of the technology by the business decision makers. And in fact, I was blogging about that only today. And one of the things that Success RM does is puts a lot more education throughout the project. So making sure that key decision makers, people who will make decisions about how CRM will be implemented, what problems it solves, make sure that they've got reasonable knowledge of the out of the box functionality so that they're focusing on the areas that the out of the box, the detail that the out of the box can't deliver to an organization that is important, rather than, and this is a true story, going off and saying, but you don't understand how important having addresses of our clients is. I don't need to understand how important addresses are, because you're going to get that regardless.
Right.
Any CRM solution is going to give you basic contact details. So focus on that delta, on the gap between what the technology gives you and what you need. A story I often tell to illustrate this is a birthday cake. I am sure most people listening to this will at some point have bought a birthday cake for a family member or a friend or a partner. And when you do that, you take the basic cake and then you focus on getting the colors of the candle, the exact wording, and so on right. You don't start saying, well, having chosen a chocolate cake, I want it to be coffee flavored. That's just not going to work successfully. So focus on that fine detail, that no cake comes with the exact words, the exact candles, and so on that you want. So that's where you focus, not on how the cake was made previously or what flavor it is or so on and so forth. Those are things that essentially you're getting regardless.
Any case you want to mention, Jill? Like someone reached out to you with a bad implementation, and as I said in my, as my question was also rescuing failed project. Any case you want to share, a proper case study? A customer reached out to you with so and so reason, and what went wrong over there, and what solution did you provide?
Well, at the moment, the best one at the moment is a project that is only about to kick off, and the organization in question is a small not-for-profit that helps people who are or have been incarcerated. get back on their feet at various ways. And they had an implementation done under prior management where there was no proper scoping done at all. And they just picked up on the idea that as one of the requirements was delivering to specific addresses, they jumped straight in and went with field service, where in actual fact, field service is complete overkill for what this client needs. And had they done detailed scoping, looked at the processes, looked at the data that needs to be handled, they would have come up with a very different solution. And it's a friend of mine who I'm now on the third project with him, all with different organizations. And he had a meeting with the CEO of the organization, who I won't name, who did the original implementation. And apparently the CEO said, but we don't do design, we don't do support, we don't do training, we just build it. And I cannot figure that out at all. How can you just build it without doing appropriate design, support, education that supports getting the build correct?
Right. So what happened, like, after your intervention or your organization intervention?
So, well, we're only just kicking off, but the project that we deliver is going to be blowing away several tens of thousands, many tens of thousands of dollars of investment that prior management spent, money that the prior management spent. And we will go back to basics and put in Dynamics 365 sales implementation and also a customer service implementation.
Right. Just out of curiosity, I want to ask this. Someone who's already had a failed implementation, how did you convince him? How did you convince the company that you can do much better, or you've handled a situation like this?
There is no one size fits all for that.
Right.
But generally will be conversations. It will look at what they were promised. It will look at the headaches that they've got. And typically I will do simple demo showing them how to overcome some of the headaches that they're experiencing. So they've got a headache, I've got a painkiller approach.
Fantastic. More like consulting approach.
Mm.
And Jill, Opsys has been providing CRM services for over 2 decades. What is the core mission of Opsys? And by the way, congratulations again, completing 20 years. And how has your organization evolved over the years to meet the changing needs of businesses?
Well, keeping on top of the technology and only engaging people to work with me, whether that's short term or long term, who are certainly willing to learn the technology, and people who are being willing also to do the move to the middle, being across education. So the business people want to learn some of the technology, not the detail, but the functionality that they've got. And then technical people that I engage have to be interested in the business side of the project, not seeing the technology as bright, shiny things for them to play with. They need to remember that their reason and how they get paid is by solving business problems.
Right. And for example, if someone is listening to this conversation, what value add does your organization bring to the table? Something different from the other competitor in the market in the CRM space.
The education. And because of this leading with education, typically our projects are cheaper because we can do them more quickly and we can keep the team smaller. Also, because everyone in a project is across the entirety of the project, we don't have these chains of communication. So just generally much more knowledgeable. And that knowledge leads to shorter projects, quicker results, faster return on investment.
Absolutely. And you've been recognized as the most influential women in CRM training and education. And I mean, how did it all started? What does this recognition means to you, and how do you maintain your influence in such a competitive space?
It's not actually being an influencer in the way that I am is
Mhm.
not as crowded as it might seem because of my approach and my massive interest in the business and the business drivers. The majority of people who are blogging, YouTube, all of the other podcasting and so on, a lot of that is bright, shiny technical toys. There's this new feature, there's that new feature, and then often not linking it to the business value that using something can deliver. But aside from that, I've written ebooks, I blog on our website, I post on LinkedIn, I comment on other people's posts, I provide training courses, and I develop my own training courses. I keep other profiles up to date. So just recently, I was recognized again on Thinkers 360 as one of the most influential CRM people. And that's again because of that breadth of approach.
There's a bit of arrogance in you, by getting recognized everywhere in the CRM community.
Um,
That was also the lighter note. You don't have to answer.
yeah, maybe not.
And also, you mentioned about training. I mean, we've had this discussion during our offline conversation that what are the options available to train Indian resources in CRM. So that's something like which we should explore as well, Jill. I'm sure because there will be so many Indian folks because we have so many training center, but there's always a bit of criticism on the training side as well. That they kind of promise a lot. I mean, the thing is, like, we'll train you as well as we'll place you in the job, but it never works in that way. And I feel that having an international exposure to our
Mm.
developer in the early stage, like someone with just 2 to 3 years of experience, getting a chance to interact with people like you or in your team, in your training team, I think that will be helpful.
And because throughout my training, I would challenge people. And so I
Mhm.
suspect that some Indians would find me hard going until they got to know me. But I'm
No,
constantly asking why. So it's not just you do X by clicking on Y.
right.
I'm constantly emphasizing why is that important? What happens if you do X rather than doing Y? What are the benefits?
We should talk. Hmm. Go ahead.
My training has a lot of questions that I want people to answer as they go through it. So, not just follow these steps, but as you follow them, what do you see? Again, my favorite 3 letter word, why? Why did that happen? Why couldn't this person now perform an action based on what you've just done? Maybe changing a security role or doing a field field profile or some other change. Why did that change lead to that change in behavior? Another thing about my training compared to a lot of people's is I insist on allowing time. There are so many people that try and put a quart into a pint pot over training. They say, oh, it can't be that hard. I know you think you need 2 hours, but I'll give you 30 minutes. My people are bright. Well, yeah, you might have the best people on the planet, but if I think it needs an hour, your people, I can guarantee, will not get it and understand the why in 30 minutes.
Right. But trust me, Jill, like, our folks will be very, very happy and excited, like, to get trained by someone like you. Because I've interacted with, even I get,
Mm.
I put this thing in my website, but I'm not doing it, like, that Microsoft Dynamics CRM training. In the early stages, we used to do it, but now I don't have the resources or time to focus on the training aspect. But there are people who still reach out to us from different locations. Listen, we want to be a certified Microsoft Dynamics consultant, where to go about it. I'll tell you, how it works in Indian organization, even on the bigger, companies. So an individual who's completed his engineering and getting a job in an IT company, he doesn't have the choice to choose which technology he can move in, because he doesn't have the knowledge. So what most of the companies, most of them, not everybody, most of them do is they kind of depending upon the qualification and the training, they will allocate the resources in testing or in development or in so and so technology. So by then, it takes a guy 3 to 4 to 5 years to mature in technical knowledge. So most of the people don't get into specialization, right? It also depending upon the environment, the circle, the which organization. I mean, I got into Microsoft because I was working with Microsoft partner. So that is how the tree is. But there are many people who have reached out to me that, listen, I'm a full stack developer, I want to try my hands, or a .NET developer mostly, yeah, a .NET developer, try, because they want to get into Dynamics CRM, or some functional consultant want to move into Microsoft. So there is a lots of scope in training, especially for Indian resources. That much I can assure you, and I can produce some people immediately for you.
As in trainers or people that want to learn?
Want to learn?
I'd be more than happy to talk to them and make it work.
Let's sit and create a plan. Once this session get over, maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow, we'll talk.
I was going to say, talking about how we both build our businesses might not be the best thing to do on a podcast.
Absolutely, I've just taken a few minutes of their time, not more than that. And also, you emphasize the importance of training and education in CRM implementation. You mentioned about a failed project. Can you explain why this is so critical, and how can a business ensure the teams are properly trained? What are the steps an organization needs to do to ensure the sales, the marketing team are trained properly, and the usage of CRM system is fully used?
Well, that's massive. We could be here for a week talking about that.
5 bullet points maybe.
Yes. So there is no organization on this planet that is going to use the entirety of a tool like Microsoft Dynamics. It is just not possible. And even if we found that rare organization that was using everything, no user within that organization would be using everything. So what is important is that people know what they need to do in order to get the maximum support for their role from the solution. And that, of course, means if we take the perspective of any one user, they need to know what is happening before particular data comes to them. And that might be a particular customer, ticket, whatever, and what happens after them. So we need to take the blinkers off. So instead of people just, well, my job is do this, fill that in, put name in there, phone number in there, whatever, they need to understand why, and the why they need to do what they need to do because of what comes later, and how to meet the customer, client, prospect's needs. Again, it all comes back to why. We need also to provide training in a form that people can get their questions answered. That also comes back to the comment I made about time and not trying to put, to use an English phrase, a quart into a pint pot with the training. Because if you've got a huge amount of material to get through, and only a small amount of time, there is no way that you can encourage free-form questions. But as well as questions during the training, which I'd like to think all trainers do, but they don't, there also needs to be opportunities the following day, the following week, once people have had time, they've slept on the training, they've gone back to work, they've seen, well, yeah, they've tried to apply the training to their work. And they think, well, I can remember doing something a bit like this, but I'm not quite sure. They need to be able to have a forum where they can get those questions answered. They need to feel heard when they think, surely I shouldn't be doing it this way. This feels awkward. It feels a long way round. Well, maybe it is. Maybe their way is better, or maybe there is a reason for doing it the long way round. Again, what's happened before? What's going to happen next? What is the whole reason for performing the process?
Absolutely, Jill. Agree with you. And Jill, what advice would you offer to someone who wants to start a career in CRM, maybe a fresher or someone want to switch from a different field to Microsoft Dynamics?
Learn the applications. I think that would be, if we're looking for a bullet point type. So learn the applications, get the exposure. And if there was one thing to echo what I said earlier, understand that whether you're a fresher, you're a little bit further on, or you're even approaching the end of your career, the reason you get paid is because you are delivering business value to the end client. And I think that is something that particularly people starting out in this career should print on a piece of paper and put on their pillow at night so it's there, or maybe they should write it on the mirror so they see it when they're cleaning their teeth in the morning. It should just be through everything that you're doing.
That's a good piece of advice. I'll do that for myself as well. Not on the CRM side, but but in other stuffs. And how about your routine? I know it's pretty hard. You do training as well as managing a company. So how do you manage your day-to-day activities, your morning schedules?
There is no such thing as a routine. I frequently say I am a long way from being a 9-to-5er. So I don't have two identical days. I spend a lot of time on the phone, on calls, mentoring people, and I fit that in between lots of other things. But I certainly don't have get up at 8 o'clock, do this, do that, do the other, go to my desk, whatever.
No complaints from your family?
No.
Yeah, they all got used to it now.
Well, I don't have kids, so that makes life a bit easier.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get into that line of conversation. I think that will take back me to 1970, 80. Yeah. Anyways, Jill, it was a pleasure talking to you. If you want to, give any feedback to us or our resources, I'll be more than happy to, take it as well as put that in the podcast as well again. Yeah. So anything from your side, you want to say on the closing?
I think just there's a lot of value for Australian people in using offshore resources, but be aware, do your preparation, and make sure you get the right people for your project, for your organization. The right people are there, but they probably won't be the first one that you interview. So work out what your criteria are and work out how you would recognize those criteria when you fall over them.
Absolutely, Jill. I'm sure the people who will listen to this podcast, I'm sure they're going to reach out to you as well. So stay away
I hope
from,
so.
Yeah, no, stay away from the people who do the sales pitch. I'll do better. I'm always here. I'm always there for you. So don't worry about it.
Thank you.
Wonderful. It was wonderful talking to you, Jill. Pleasure. Talk to you soon. And that's a wrap for today's episode. A big thanks to our guest and to you for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us bring more awesome episodes. For more update, visit our website at onsiteandoffshore.com and do follow us on social media. Stay tuned for more exciting content in the coming weeks. Until next time, this is Suresh Ashok signing off. Take care and keep thriving in your offshoring journey.